Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in this video we are going to cover the SAS macro, one of the most important and most powerful feature any programming language can offer you. So that's the catch in this video. And if you're very first time on my channel, make sure you subscribe to it and you watch the other video in the same playlist. Okay, so we'll start with the macro variable, then we'll move to macro functions. After that, we'll show you how the macro helps in automation, and finally you will look at the debugging techniques. If you want to write dynamic and reusable SAS code, this is the video for you. Okay, this video is a must watch, and let's get started. So first of all of you can see on my screen, it's the SAS University edition, which is free of cost. So Google it and you can also find the edition free of cost. You can run your SAS codes. Make sure you download all the SAS codes from my description box. So this is the basic way that I am creating macro variable. Okay, macro variables are used to store values that can be reused across the whole program. They make your code very dynamic in nature. So these are the two ways. Basically, I use the let statement to create macro variable, and then ampersand name is resolve the value. Basically, ampersand helps to resolve the macro value, and put is basically help to print it somehow. Then let's run this. So you can see name equal to Raj. Just see in the code. Name equal to Raj, and that what I'm doing, put basically print hello and ampersand name. Ampersand name has a value of Raj. I can change it. I can make it Raja Sahab. Okay. Now what will be the output? You all can assume. Simple. So this is the basic way to create your macro, and in day-to-day basis you will create macro using this functionality itself. Using macro variable in code. Now let's talk about that. Okay, so for that let me give you one small code, and then let's see how macro variables are called inside or created inside the data step in the code. So if you see, there is a data set called sales. Inside that you have these three variables, and then I am just passing the data. So this is pretty much understandable. All of you who are in this playlist, so you might have understood it completely. So from line number 6 to line number 14, we are creating a data set, and we are pulling these three columns for all this data. So this is your employee ID, this is your region, then you have the amount. So what I'm putting, I'm creating a new data set called filter, where I'm setting the sales. Setting sales means like I'm just appending the data. If region equal to ampersand region, where I created this variable, you can see here, region north. Okay, so now region has a value of north, so it will resolve region equal to north, then print the value. So now this region you can use anywhere in your complete code. Now let me just select this code, run this. So you can see the output. Similarly, if I do this thing, that if region equal to north, I don't use the macro variable, just use north. This will also give you the same output. But now you have so many filters in a single big SAS program, but here you had a small filter, so you can say that we can use directly north. But in a very big program where you have 2000 line of code, you cannot write north everywhere manually. If you want to filter at certain steps, so it will be really irritating, and it will actually drive so many manual mistakes in your SAS code. So basically it's avoidable. So how we should go about that? Using a macro variable. This will simply do the work for us, and we don't have to change the north manually in the rest of the program. Just call this macro variable. Things are sorted. So macro variables are the containers, you simply understand, which has a value in it, and macro variable controls filter dynamically. It's very strong and very useful. Now let's talk about macro functions. So basically macro functions help manipulate text and value inside the macro variable. To understand the macro function, let me paste small code here. So you can see here that I am creating a macro variable world using SAS programming, and that's now will be stored in this container, and then I'm using the uppercase and length. So this should be converted to uppercase, and this should be giving us the length. So if I run this code, this options, and this is by default you need to give in your SAS programming, otherwise sometime it hits error. Okay, so when I run this, you can see SAS programming is converted into uppercase, and you can see the length. So you can count the length also by your own self. I think that's pretty much easy. Okay, now let's move on to creating a simple macro variable. How do you do that? So a simple way to create macro is this also. Ampersand macro is defining the macro, and ampersand ds is the parameter which I'm passing. So creating the macro, the name of the macro is here, and this is the parameter inside the macro. Then proc print equal to, we are resolving this parameter. Now parameter can be anything, you can pass that later on, and then run proc print need a run, and then this macro you started here in line number 31, you are ending this macro at line number 34. So basically now when you will call print data, this is your container, this is your macro. Inside that you will give the parameter. Now this sales will be stored inside ds, and this will be resolved here. So when I run this code, sales will come from the top, the sales data set which we are talking here. Okay, so this is again very powerful method to use the SAS macro. Now let's talk about automation using the SAS macro. So we can use loops there, again a very important concept. So I'm creating a macro, name of the macro is loop example, and then this is the do loop. Okay, so this is a syntax, just memorize this. Do I equal to, the counter starts %2 3. So the loop will run for how many times? You answer that. Pretty much easy, right? Then put iteration. Iteration is what? Again, it's a kind of a parameter. It's kind of a keyword which you would be using here. On iteration on which? This value. So your loop would be running on iteration basis every time, and then end. This end is for this do loop, and after that I'm ending my macro, and then I'm just printing this. So how many times this should run? That's why I have not told you this. So you should be able to get it now when I will run this code. Let's select these lines and run this. How many times the code should run? 3 times. These are the 3 times. Iteration 1, iteration 2, and iteration 3. It's very easy, guys, very powerful. So basically %do, %2 is basically creating the loop, and it runs basically multiple time dynamically. Now let's talk about debugging the macro. That is again very important concepts, guys. So for debugging the macro, you need to remember certain options, like options mprint, mlogic, and symbolgen. These are the 3 options you will always need to remember. Line number 46 is something you need to focus. Basically mprint shows the generated code by your macro. Then mlogic basically shows the execution flow of your macro, and symbolgen shows the resolution, like how the macro variable is resolved. So this shows you everything. Now let's try to run this 3 line. You will understand this. See, the output for all of them has come. So symbolgen, macro variable name resolved to Raj. You can see that. Okay, and then similarly you can see this code. So this is the output of your mprint and mlogic. Again, mprint shows the generated code, mlogic shows the flow. What is a flow? So you can see the flow, and then symbolgen basically value resolution, how it is resolved. So now common mistakes we should definitely talk about. Forgetting ampersand before the macro is very common mistake. Then missing percentages in the macro statement is again very common mistake. Then confusing data step versus macro step. You should not do that. Use run where it's required. Use %end where it's required, and not using debugging options. These are the debugging options. Okay. So let's quickly summarize this video. So macro variable use code dynamically in SAS environment. That's why they are useful. Macro functions are used to manipulate the values. Macro helps in automation, and debugging options help trace the error. So once you master the macro, your SAS coding becomes much more powerful. So if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this video, and keep staying with me for the next video. And you will be able to get this code from the GitHub repository. The link will be there in the description box. All the best. Thank you, guys.